Hey guys, it's your boy Mr. B, and in today's lesson we're going to learn how to set up a database. And there's no better sport to learn how to use a database with than baseball. So this one's going to be called Databaseball. Let's go. Now you may be asking yourself, what is a database? So first, let's learn a little bit about databases.
Databases are all around you. Have you ever waited at the doctor's office while the receptionist punched in your information? Or asked a store employee to check their system for a special item? Then you've seen a database in action. The truth is, they're so useful you see them all the time.
But what exactly is a database?
Well, it's a collection of information or data that's stored on a computer, allowing you to enter, access, and analyze it in a way you never could on paper. Let's think about that. Before computers, what sort of paper records do you think the doctor's office kept on file? Certainly a list of patients and their contact information. Also their medical history and a list of past appointments. That's how databases work, from the simplest to the most complex. They're basically a collection of lists, not on paper but on your computer, where programs like Access make it possible to organize your data, make it searchable, and so much more. Let's take a look.
Yes, let's take a look indeed. Now, of course, you are living through the most prolific time for baseball players ever, correct? Or are you? Maybe the previous generations of baseball players were better. Let's find out today with a database as we pit the new school baseball players versus the old school baseball players in today's showdown. And in this corner, we have the top 5 greatest baseball players from all time. I just Google searched it and I went to ESPN and I'm looking at Ted Williams, number 5, Ty Cobb, number 4, 3, Hank Aaron, 2, Willie Mays, and number 1, Babe Ruth. That's the list of players that we are going to compete against today. So let's go ahead, go back into Schoology and open up the My Documents on this assignment. And first thing I need to do is figure out what things I'm going to keep track of to determine whether they were a good baseball player. You're going to choose the same things that I'm choosing right now. So first thing I need to keep track of, which is called a field name, is the name of the person. So I'm going to have just the word name right there, okay, in A1. That is going to be our field name, and that's a category of information that we are going to keep track of in a database. The next field will be the team. What team did they play for? I can hit the tab button, and that takes me across the spreadsheet after I fill in something, and I hit the return key to send me down the spreadsheet. So tab to go over, return to go down. The next thing I want to keep track of is how many games did they play? They weren't just a one-off player that had one good season. I wanted to show that they were a great player over a long period of time. The next thing is going to be batting average. How many times were they able to hit the ball when it counted? The batting average. Let's check out runs batted in. Runs batted in. Their RBI rating. And then finally, the home runs, where the big money's at. How many home runs did that player have? That's what the people come to see. So those are my fields. Name, team, games. Go ahead and set up your spreadsheet just like that. The next thing I want to do is make sure that my field names always stay at the top of my list so that if I scroll down, as you can see, I'm scrolling through the numbers here. Even though I'm scrolling down, I want my field names to remain at the top row. To do that, I need to freeze row 1. So I'm going to go up to View, and I'm going to say Freeze row 1. Now, as you see, it makes a thick gray line there, and as I scroll down, the numbers of the cells change down here, but my field names remain at the top. That's a good database. Now that I have my database set up correctly, I can make my columns a little bit wider because I know the names are probably going to run off into the next row. And so I don't want that to happen here. So I can go in between the letters, in between A and B, not here, down here, but up here. I can click and I can drag that open a little bit on one side. Now, if I want to even out all of these and make them the same size, check this out. I can click on one column, by clicking on the B, and that'll highlight the entire column. And then I could go to the F and hold down the shift button, and that will select everything in between B and F. If I click on the F right here, and that makes all of the rows highlighted. So now I can readjust one of the rows like this, just a little bit wider for each column. And when I let go, all of them will be adjusted so that they'll all be a little bit larger. I can also say that I want some of these to be centered. So I can click on the number 1, and that will select the entire row here. And I could say I want to center all these texts inside my row. So I come up here. So this is a little bit of a word processing formatting tip right there. And I can also change up the font to be something spicy. So go ahead. You could change that up, increase the size maybe, since they are the field names up here. But of course, you just want it on row 1. So now I'm starting to do what is called data entry. I'm going to grab information and put it into the table or the columns and rows here to keep record of my players. And I use that word record because a record is a line of information that I'm going to be keeping track of. So each player in my list will become a record. I'm going to put in, starting with the 5 best players of all time that I found on the internet. You're going to use my same 5 players. So let's go to that website and take a look at those names once again. Check out my names: Babe Ruth, Willie Mays. I'm going to bring them and type them into my spreadsheet. So here are my 5 players. You could pause the video now and type them in. What I have to do now is fill in the rest of my record or do my data entry. So the first name is Babe Ruth, so I'm going to go to a statistics website that will tell me all the information that I'm looking for. Here I am on baseballreference.com, and I'm going to be looking for Babe Ruth, and I could go right up here and I could type in Ruth or Babe or whatever, and I find his name on the list, and I can click on his name and it'll take me right to his page where it tells me more about Babe Ruth. So do the first one with me right here so that you know just how I keep records and how I find the statistics. The second column of my database talks about what team he played for. So I'm going to go ahead and pick out what the team was that he played the most for, and that was the New York Yankees. Click on New York Yankees, copy that, and I can paste it in to the list. Now I'm going to paste it in, but sometimes when I paste it in, watch what happens. Command V, or I just go to paste, and it goes in and it's a different font than everything else because it's grabbing the font from the website and not using the font that is with the database. So what I need to do is I need to hit undo. So if this happens to you at any time during the course of importing data and it comes in the wrong format, you can simply click undo, or you see right there it says Command Z to undo on the keyboard. Undo it, and now I want to paste it into that cell, but without any of the other stuff. So to do that, I'm going to go to paste special and say value only, and then it comes in what it should be. And if I mess up too much and I ever have to go back to the original format, I can simply click any cell out and away down here somewhere that hasn't been formatted at all. And I could do this little trick right here, which is called paint format. So I'm going to paint whatever the format of this cell is into up here. So I could go like this here. Watch this. I click on that cell down there and I say paint format, and I click on the batting average, and it, boom, whacks it back to the normal font like you see right here. But I didn't want that, so I'll undo that thing. But if at any time you mess up, you can always just select some rando cell, hit paint format, and then crank it back to normal again. So I'm looking for games, batting average, runs batted in, and home runs. Let's go find that on that website. And I'm back in Babe Ruth's webpage here, and I'm looking for games. And I want to go the total of his career. So I scroll down here to the big table right here, and it says he has 2,503, 2503. 2503, bring it back to my spreadsheet and type that in, or copy and paste in value only. 2503. Now I'm going to be looking for batting average. So batting average can be a little bit tricky because they are using these abbreviations up here. But batting average BA, the batting average is under BA. And I see down here it says 0.342. 0.342. But I could also look up top. There's a lot of information right here about his entire career right up top here. And I see that batting average is also up here. So I go 0.342. So you're following along with me. So under batting average, I'm doing 0.342. That's a very high batting average. That's going to be tough to beat. Runs batted in, or RBIs. Let's go back to the website. I see RBIs right here, 2214. 2214 for runs batted in. Now I'm going in to home runs. Home runs. Here we go. Home runs would be 714. Jeez. 714. All right. So now you see how I'm laying this out. Babe Ruth, the team that he played the most for, how many games he played, the batting average, runs batted in, and I'm finding this information from that website. Let's take a look at this real quick. I have all my players here who they played for the most, and again, it doesn't matter if they played equal amount of time on one team or the other team. It doesn't matter. You can choose, but you can also just copy what I have right here. Also, if the batting average ends in a zero, like if it's instead of 305, it's 300. Watch what happens to this number. It cuts it down because the zeros are just placeholders. The zeros don't have any value in this number, but I can correct that by clicking on the entire column and then selecting these zeros and say I want more zeros or I want less zeros so that they're all balanced like that. Now, of course, I'm going to change that back to what it should be, which is 305. And of course, you're going to enter them in the exact same way that I have with the name, team, games, batting average. You're going to put everything into the database just the same way that I did for these top 5 players. Now it's your turn. You're going to find the next 5 players that you're going to enter in. So we're either going to do a Google search for today's best baseball players, or you can choose the next 5 from your favorites list. Who will they be competing against? Go to Google and search up who the best players of today are. These best baseball players. So according to my statistics today, current day, when I'm making this video, I have a list right here from ESPN. My top 5 are right here. However, you may have a different top 5 according to when you do your search. Also, you may want to select some of your favorite baseball players and throw them into this mix so that you can see how they stack up against the all-time greatest. And of course, you're going to enter them in the exact same way that I have with the name, team, games, batting average. You're going to put everything into the database just the same way that I did for these top 5 players. So you're going to do your search on baseballreference.com and then bring your information back to the spreadsheet. So just some editing and formatting tips here. If you look here, it says San Francisco Giants is trailing off into the next cell, and we don't want that to happen. So if you go in between the 2 letters, remember, you can adjust the entire column width, or I can just double click on it. Watch what happens here. When I double click on it, it automatically snaps to the largest width that I need to make all my words fit in. So that's a great tip right there. And as you can see here, I have some oddball cells that are formatted. So again, I can click anywhere in a normal cell down here or wherever, and I say paint format, and then I could say just paint it over top of all of these and watch what happens. Boom, it snaps it. It gets rid of the backgrounds, the different colors, all that stuff. Now it's time to create the real magic of a database. And that is to be able to organize the information, to be able to maybe filter out some things that I don't want to be looking at right now and sort through the information as I see fit. So to do this, the first thing I need to do is make sure that I'm clicking on my table, which is my table of information, somewhere in my data, anywhere in my data. I can't click down here because that will filter a bunch of nothing down here. But if I click on my filter, my computer will now understand that I'm talking about all this information that is in these connected cells right here. Then I scroll over to the upper right hand side. I might have to hit the drop down for the more option, but I should find a create a filter button right here. If I click on that, it will create a one-time filter so that I can filter the information, but only I will be able to see this. If I'm sending this to somebody else, I may need to create a filter, which is this drop down right here, create new filter view. Then I can apply that to other things and other people will be able to see it. We'll get that to that in 1 minute. So the first and most obvious thing that I will do here is sort by name. I will organize this list by the name. So if you see all these names are out of order right here, I can click on the drop down because I have these little drop downs next to the field names in my columns. I can click that drop down and say sort A to Z, which is alphabetical like this. And now it moved the players around. It kept my name and team up at the top, but my players have now shifted, and all the information that goes along with that player or with that record has shifted as well with it. So you have by first name, it organized it because that's the first letter that's entered into this cell. So that organized alphabetically. Now, even though the sort says A to Z like this, that doesn't mean that it always has to be a letter. It can sort information. A to Z is just a reference to say the first item to the last item, but it could be a number as well. So, for instance, we could check to see who has the most home runs. And we can click this drop down and we could say we could sort it from the smallest number to the largest number here, which would organize it like this. And we could see that Jordan has the least amount of home runs and Hank Aaron has the most amount of home runs. Or I can sort it the reverse order, which brings the highest number to the top and the lowest number to the bottom. So you can do that with any one of these field names up at the top. You could just simply sort the information up here, least to greatest, greatest to least, or alphabetical order, or reverse alphabetical. So you see, he has the most home runs, Hank Aaron, but he also has the most amount of games. So that sort of makes sense, right? So you could mess around with it if you want and see how these sort options actually readjust all this information here. When you no longer want to be filtering stuff, you can simply click and remove the filter and it will leave it in the last state that it was in with the records as they were when you last sorted them. Let's go about this filter a little bit different now and remove some of these players that I don't necessarily want to focus on at the moment. So to do this, again, I need to be somewhere in my table, click somewhere in your table, and then create a filter. Now, if I said I want to create a filter that shows the home runs, people that have home runs over 500, I can simply click this drop down here and say filter by condition. And the condition will be greater than 500. So if I hit none here, I scroll down here, I say greater than, and I type in 500. So any number greater than 500 will now be listed and it will take away all the players that don't have at least 500. So it didn't delete these players that were down here. And as you can see, this was record number 2, 3, 7, and 10. It just removed them from my site by filtering out the information. So I could go back over here and say, take off the filter right here by clicking that again, and it brings back all the players. We're going to try something a little bit different this time. We are going to try to save the filter so that no matter who opens up this document, they will be able to apply the exact same filter that I'm going to ask for. So I go up here like this and I click the drop down. And instead of just clicking on the filter button, I'm going to click the drop down and say create a new filter. If I click create a new filter, now this darker border comes around the filter and I can name the filter. So anytime I want to see this filter one, I could scroll back up to the filter menu, hit the drop down, and you see it says filter one here. So if I change the name over here to Databaseball, so if I type in Databaseball up here for the name, now when I come over here, you'll see that the filter name is called Databaseball. I could have more than one filter here as well. So now I could say, listen, anytime anybody wants to come over here, they can sort through or they could filter out certain players. So, for instance, maybe I want to say players that have been in the league for the longest period of time. Let's say they had to be in the league for over, say, 1,500 games. So if I say games and I say filter by condition, you could do this along with me and hit greater than and say these players have been in the league more than 1,500 games because I'm in the games field here. So now I click OK and it filters out all the players that have less than 1,500 games. All I'm seeing is the players that have greater than 1,500 games now. So to remove this filter now and go back to seeing all of my players, I could go up to the filter menu again and hit the drop down and click on none. And that will remove the filter so that all my players reappear. Now, if I were to share this with, say, the teacher or a friend or a colleague that I would have to share this database with, they can now apply that same filter that I created here. So I might want to call it something and say Databaseball. Now it reapplies the filter. So I can turn it off and on again or create more than one filter in that column. So I have this filter applied here where it's showing me only players that have over 1,500 games. And now I can also sort this list, just this list. So I could say sort just this list of information here. So now it's showing me the players that have over 1,500 games, and it's sorted alphabetically because I clicked on the name and sort A to Z. If I created a filter in a weird spot, so for instance, if I clicked one of these cells down here and I created the filter like this, you could see I can't sort anything up here. There's no drop downs because I only selected this cell and it wasn't a part of my table. So to get rid of this filter, I could do one of two things. I can change the range to say, listen, I want to filter from A1 all the way to F11, as I see right here. So I could go A1 to F11 and now it'll bring my range back up. Or I could simply just delete that filter from this list here. So if I created a filter that I no longer want, I can click on that filter and then go back up to that filter menu, hit the drop down and say delete this filter. And it didn't delete any information. It just deleted the filter. So you don't see filter 1 here anymore. The filter that I created, it just deleted the filter for me. So at this point, you already know how to do a filter and you know how to do a sort because you followed along with the directions. Now, here's what I want you to do with your current list. I want you to create a new filter. So we are going to filter the players that have a batting average over 300. And then, don't forget this, then I want you to sort that list. I want you to sort that list by the games right here from greatest to least. So now you have to figure out how to get the filters to operate so that you can only see the players that have a batting average over 300 and they are organized by the games column so that the highest numbers at the top and the lowest numbers at the bottom. So to start this, I want to make sure that I have one of the cells, again, select it within my table. I want to create a new filter, and I'm going to name it something special here. I'm going to say filter batting average 300, and then I'm going to say sort, S for sort, and then games. So you can create this new filter, name it filter BA 300, and then sort games just like that. Hit return, and then use the drop downs, use the filter and the sort options to display just the players that I'm looking for. Okay. And then at the end, you'll be able to see that your filter is here. And this is how I grade it. When it comes in, it won't have any filters on it. If you go back to Schoology, this is the way it will look. This is the way it will look when I open it. I will go up to my filter. I will select the correct filter that you've created right here. And if it displays the players with the batting average over 300 and it's sorted greatest to least, I'll know you did the work and I will grade it a 100. If you have any filters that don't belong there, like filter 1, that one's a dead filter, I can click on that filter. It was created accidentally, and I could go to filter options and hit delete that filter. Once you're sure you have the players with a batting average over 300 and they're sorted by the games, you can now go back to Schoology and submit the assignment.